You're watching the Battered Fans Network.
Welcome, everybody, to episode number 40 of the Battered MLS Fans Podcast. I am your host, Daniel Ganada, and I am joined by a panel of MLS content creators, and I have the last one that just joined right now. Let me bring him on here, Mr. Todd Lewis. Let me start with you, Todd. Todd Lewis from the Free Kick Pod. How are you doing, sir?
Doing better now that the laptop, decided to freeze up when I tried to join. So glad I'm here with you guys, and let's hope that we don't have any technical issues.
No, none. Let's go clockwise. It's Sam, Vancouver, the third sub. What's going on, man? How you doing?
Doing really well. Happy to be on. Yeah, pretty rainy here up in Canada, but good night to be on the show.
Any word on what's going on with Vancouver yet? You guys keeping the Whitecaps, right?
Just in terms of the ownership situation. I mean, I think no news is good news in terms of potential relocation. So we'll take it, and obviously it's been a good start to the year.
Yeah, absolutely. Ty, you know what? Out of all the surprise starts, I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm a little more surprised with Columbus than anybody else. What's going on, Ty?
No, can't complain. Another day in paradise. How are you?
Living the dream. And then last but not least, Mr. Chris from St. Louis Soccer News. St. Louis haven't allowed a goal yet. That's almost as impressive as New England not scoring yet. How you doing, Chris?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on, Daniel. It's always good to talk to you guys.
Yeah, man. I appreciate all four of you guys jumping on. Now, the four of you have teams that got off to hot starts, and we want to talk about all of them and then maybe even add a couple more that maybe haven't been talked about. But I wanted to start with the hottest team in the league, the Vancouver Whitecaps. Sam, 4-0. Now, in the preview show that I had you on, we weren't talking 4-0. Are you surprised by the hot start? And do you think it's possible to keep it going? Like, what is it that's going on right now?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I guess there's two sides to it, right? There's something that's really, really encouraging and seems very, very sustainable, which is the structure that Jesper Sorensen has brought in. I think in some ways it's really simplified the game a little bit for a roster that was like largely unchanged. They actually lost a designated player in Stuart Armstrong, who was only in the mix briefly. Really, this is the same team as last year, but they're playing in most of the time a 4-3-3, and it's just a system that there's some basic defensive structure, there's some basic attacking principles, but other than that, this is a team that just kind of lets their individual players cook and do what they do best. And I think in Vanni Sartini's system the last couple of years, it was, full zonal marking defensively. There were very precise instructions in terms of patterns in possession. And you could see a lot of the players kind of thinking the game and not necessarily playing instinctively. And so I think Sorensen has allowed what was already a pretty good roster to just kind of do its thing and flourish. So that's positive. I think the defensive play has been very good. They're getting goals from different contributors. Ryan Gauld, was injured for the most recent match. So, it's not like they've been uber lucky injury-wise. Sam Adekubi also picked up an injury. So there's good signs that that's sustainable throughout the season. Now, I think the other thing to look at is the teams they played so far. Yeah. And I think you kind of saw that on the schedule going into the season, that early season was more of a mixed bag, and you got a lot of the heavy hitters later on. So that's fair. This team's not going to go undefeated. There's going to be stumbling blocks. But I think the problem is Vancouver was a team that should have been 4th or 5th in the West last year, and they ended up finishing 8th because they blew games against teams well below them in the standings. So the fact that they're going out and, I think the FC Dallas match this past weekend is a great example. They only beat Dallas 1-0, but if you watch that match, it was thorough domination in terms of the overall flow of the match. And we just didn't see that from the Whitecaps last year, comprehensive performances. So I think that part of it is sustainable. Whether the results are sustainable in the long term, we're going to have to wait and see.
Does anybody else on here expect Vancouver to keep hot? Because I do, just because I think their attack is lethal. But I could see where the trepidation is in believing in Vancouver with the competition. Even though the Monterrey thing is what kind of, I think, gave everybody some like, okay, this team might be for real, because even though they didn't beat Monterrey, they just drew with them, and they drew a higher goal total away from home.
Well,
But
the one thing I'll throw in there is that I think that scoreline does flatter Monterrey a little bit in the second leg, because I don't know who was watching, but that penalty decision that they gave right at the end of the match, that was just like based on Sergio Ramos staring in the official's eyes. Like, it was a ridiculous penalty. So I do want to give the Whitecaps credit there, where I think 2-2 is like a harsh scoreline for them in that second leg.
Fair. Todd, Vancouver, is that the Philadelphia of the West? You believe in Vancouver?
Yeah, I mean, Brian Wright is fantastic goal scoring. I think he has 8 goals in all competitions so far this season. And when you have a player that's as lethal as him, putting the ball in the back of the net, the Union kind of have somebody similar in Ty Burrebo in Philadelphia, 6 goals in MLS play. And so, yeah, I mean, if you have a striker that's in tip-top form like a Brian Wright or a Ty Burrebo, and you have a playmaker and a Ryan Gauld, you're going to go far in this league. I mean, look, I think we've talked about this before on the show, Danny, where you look at the designated players around the league. Teams aren't investing designated players in defense or goalkeepers unless you're St. Louis. It's all attacking players. And so when your attacking players are getting you results, you're going to do well in this league. And so, yeah, I'm not surprised to see Vancouver, off to a strong start. Maybe a little bit because of them being in CCC. On the flip side of it, I know we don't have anybody here talking Cincinnati, but when they came into Philadelphia a couple of weeks ago, people were a little bit shocked that the Union beat up on them, because they're supposed to be this top team with a Kevin Danke and Vander from Portland. But then let's not forget, they just had a CCC game during the week, and then they were preparing for Tigres over on Tuesday, I believe it was. And so
that was on them for not rotating their roster for that game.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, so many times we see MLS teams struggle early on in MLS league play because they're focusing more so on CONCACAF Champions Cup, and that's not really been the case with Vancouver. So yeah, maybe a little bit surprised, but like I said, I mean, when you have those attacking players, all hitting early on, they're going to take you far.
Chris, only team above St. Louis right now is Vancouver. You believe in Vancouver? You think St. Louis can make a run for that?
Well, no, I think Vancouver is deep. They have, fortunately so far for them, dodged any kind of real injury issues. They haven't had kind of any devastating injuries like a team like the Galaxy or somebody else, along those lines have had to deal with. It's a very hard place to play. Nobody wants to go up and play on that turf. It's an inherent advantage that they have, and just, from us being in the league for 2 years now, we've heard our players say, like, yeah, it's not a pleasant surface to play on. The pace of the ball is weird. And so those guys play on it all the time, and they have that advantage of knowing how to play on that surface. I mean, we Todd made a good point in bringing up Brian White. I mean, he owns no team in the league like he owns City. Like, he, I think, has 7 goals in 4 games against us. Like, he annihilates us, right? And so it's really hard for, at least as a St. Louis fan, to look at them and go, oh yeah, they're gonna, they're not all they're cracked up to be, because until they show that they're not, like, I think you have to give them the benefit of the doubt. They have a squad that's been together for long enough now. It's not like they've just inserted all these random pieces. Like, the core of their team has been together for a significant amount of time, and there's something to be said for that. And so, yeah, I'm definitely a believer in Vancouver for sure.
No, and then you have your attacking three. You have Gauld, you have White, and you have Nelson. And then in the midfield, you have Cubas, you have Berhalter, and you have Vite. That's a nice squad. I don't know how the depth is looking for Vancouver, but if you guys stay healthy, that's a nice squad right there.
Yeah, it's been something too where I think something we've talked about a lot in our coverage of the team is 2 young guys, kind of early mid-20s, that have needed to take a big step. Ali Ahmed, who represents Canada, and then Pedro Vite, as you mentioned, for Ecuador. Those are guys that they've kind of been a year away from being like top-level contributors in MLS for 2 or 3 years now. And it seems like Sorensen's getting the most out of those guys. Like, Pedro Vite has perhaps been Vancouver's best player so far this year.
Didn't he?
Exactly, and he's been in the mix more for Ecuador recently, and he's been one of those guys where it's like, when's the move to Europe coming? And a season like this season might be what it takes to kind of give him that move. And again, he's always been a midfielder that loves a free role, loves to just get on the ball and do his thing. Never really had the license to do that under Sartini. Was more of a deployed almost as like a six that could make great passes from deep, but it kind of limited him offensively. So I think those two young guys, in addition to White and Gauld, which have been doing their thing for years now, I think it's that extra little ingredient, being a little less predictable offensively, that I think has increased the danger of this group.
Well, I wasn't surprised with the goals. I'm surprised with the 4-0 start, but like you said, the competition has been a little weak. I'm kind of curious to see how things go when they play. Who do they got next? They have
So it's Chicago Fire this weekend.
That's right. Somebody just said in the chat against Berhalter. Berhalter versus Berhalter. That should be interesting.
Exactly, yeah.
Let's move over to Ohio. Ty Fisher, the Columbus Crew. Nancy finally gets to prove himself. He lost Cucho. He lost Christian Ramirez. I thought that would mean he would lose some footing in the standings, but somehow he's managed to keep afloat. They're third in the standings right now in the East. I know it's early in the season. Ty, Columbus. Are you surprised at the way that they've looked so far? And what's going on with Columbus?
I think surprise is an understatement, to be honest with you.
They kept Max Arfson, which was a positive, because you and I were talking before the season started. We weren't sure if he's going to be there.
Yeah, I think understatement is a severe understatement. I think it's more so of I'm flabbergasted that we are not so far lower in the Eastern Conference standings. It's a thing where, it's the next man up mentality, as Columbus says, right? Diego Rossi, Jason Rossero starting to prove that he is a number 9, that he can kind of take the weight off of Diego Rossi's shoulders, because, when Cucho leaves and Ramirez leaves, that leaves all the weight on Diego Rossi to score the goals, right? Jason Rossero has come in and has proven that he deserves the minutes that he's gotten. He's proven that he can be a goal scorer. He's proven ever since that he signed the first team contract from Columbus Crew 2 that he has what it takes to be a first team member. And Wilfred Nancy has definitely earned that trust from him, and vice versa. As far as we go, I think we were very lucky to get a point out of San Diego. I think we were also very poor against Houston. But I think
you got lucky against Chicago the first game of the season.
We got very lucky against Chicago the first game of the season. But yeah, I think it's kind of odd, because now you look at the guys and, normally Cujo makes runs deep into his defensive third. Nobody does that. So everybody's just standing around waiting for somebody to do that, because Cujo normally does that. Not anymore. So now it's okay. How can we kind of service the ball to our wing backs where we like to play out of, whether it's Max Arfson, whether it's Mo Farsi, whether it's, a Diego Rossi kind of coming back, or just going through the middle through Sean Zawadzki and Darlington Nagbe. You can definitely see the identity is kind of crinkled a little bit, as I might say, but it's getting there, right? We talked to Wilfred Nancy today. Things are happening behind the scenes. It's one of those kind of wait games, right? If it doesn't happen sooner or later, we have to wait till the summer window. But I think this team is well balanced enough that they kind of depend on each other and work with each other well to fill the void that Christian had left this team. I mean, we're still getting goals. We're still getting points. I haven't lost the game yet, but that's going to be tested this week against New York City FC.
Is that game in New York?
That's here in Columbus.
Okay. Because if it's in New York, you're going to lose. That's like the most unfair home field advantage in the league, playing in that goddamn baseball field.
Yeah. But yeah, I think the true test of depth, because we're also out without Patrick Schulte, Mo Farsi, Max Arfson, and Taha Brun. Yeah. So we're without three key pieces, a fourth with Taha coming off the bench. The true test of depth is going to be this weekend, 100%.
It's kind of unfair, huh? That they gave Messi the week off for international duty and nobody else. Inter Miami is them and Seattle, I think, are the only teams that have the week off. for
Yeah.
international break.
Mhm.
Yeah. Rough. I feel for you. So you said that they're looking to possibly getting another DP because they need it.
Yeah.
But do you expect them to cool off? Because of the way they've arrived where they are,
Yeah.
I know that confidence helps, right? Because I feel like no matter how you get there, you got there, and that builds confidence. And I think that that's
Yeah.
going to go a long way. But I recognize that own goal and that giveaway in the first game against Chicago that gave you the win, and then the scoreless draw against Houston, and then this one against San Diego, it does give me some trepidation to say that they're gonna keep consistent. How are you feeling about Columbus?
I mean, it's that's what soccer is, right? You know,
Yeah.
soccer is one of those, you know, you ride the highs all the way until you get fallen off, right? And it's an emotional game. It's for everybody, for fans, for us that are on the beat that cover the team, for the players themselves. It's an emotional roller coaster, but I think this could be the game that Columbus decides to get humbled because of our players missing. I mean, hell, we're even still missing Steven Moreira because he got hurt, and Rudy Camacho and Malde Amundsen, who got a red card against San Diego. So if according to Chris Doran, if his math is right, there's going to be 13 outfield players for 10 positions.
Jesus.
Yeah. I mean, our back line is in shambles, right? So this is going to be a test. I do think we get humbled, but I don't think we get humbled enough to the point where it's like, damn, what the fuck do we do now? But it's going to be one of those, oh, hey, wake up call.
And then you have DC United, I think, after that. So
thanks a lot.
That's a good pick me up.
Yeah.
Todd, I know. Is it Columbus or Cincinnati that you dislike? Because I know you dislike one of those Ohio teams.
No, I think I've taken shots at both.
Okay.
I respect both organizations. I think
That's crazy, Todd. I helped show you around.
Yeah. I mean, look, I've said it on this show before. I've said it on my show. I think Rafa Nancy is the best coach in MLS, and I'll stick by that. And you know, this year when you lose a player like Cucho, you know, you go out and show even more. And you just the one thing that I respect about him is that roster. So many college guys. Ty can tell you, so many guys came up through the college ranks, or so many guys came up through Columbus Crew too. And Rafa Nancy has them playing like they're seasoned pros, and it looks like they've been Columbus Crew players for years and years. And so, I mean, that's really good coaching right there. And he knows the system that he wants to play. He's not going to change that, kind of like a Ruben or Armour with Manchester United. But I don't know. I think Wilfred may be a little bit better of a coach because these players, it doesn't matter who it is, just seem to seamlessly fit into what he's creating in Columbus. And the same thing can be said about what he did in Montreal. And look what Montreal's been since he's left. And that's just really good coaching that they have out there in Columbus. And then I have a lot of respect for Cincinnati just because of the connections with all the former Philadelphia Union front office staff or former players. So I mean, I don't have anything
Cincy that you took shots at. Okay, it was Cincy. All right. I know the Nancy love goes across league wide, but just real quick, Sam, Chris, either one of you, do you guys believe in Columbus? I know you probably don't watch them as closely since you're out on the West Coast, but do you believe in Columbus and Nancy? Sam?
Yeah, I think, I would just kind of echo everything Todd said about there was a lot of appreciation for what Nancy was doing in Montreal, up here in Canada. And then also, Mo Farsi's changed allegiances, but he has Canadian ties. And then Russell Rowe as well. Those are players that we've sort of been tracking for a long time. So seeing them doing well. And as both Todd and Ty were saying, just like the young players that have come up in that system, definitely aspirational, something that I think Vancouver is trying and hoping to emulate in a lot of ways. I mean, I guess my question a little bit about looking at Columbus through the first 4 matches and then considering what they did in CONCACAF as well, it seemed like incredibly hot and cold defensively, where there's those 2 matches in the middle in MLS where they're like elite and they concede almost nothing. And then the other 2 and the first leg against LAFC where it kind of seemed like the wheels maybe came off a little bit in certain moments. So I'm wondering what the analysis is or what's going on there, Ty, from your perspective.
Yeah. Truth be told, we normally have Rudy Camacho in that, that sweeper defensive position, but he started the season injured, right? So now we take our backup center back or our left center back and put him in the center. We take our left center back off the bench, put him in the starting position. Steven Moreira is still on the right. That's fine, but it's more so, there's gaps in playing time, right? Because Mate Amundsen started at the left center back position in MLS Cup 2023, then gets dropped to the bench for Yevon Shaberko with Camacho and Steven Moreira, which is our dominant three. And then, you have Camacho hurt. Then you want to shift things around a little bit where players seem to be kind of out of their comfort zone, right? Yes, they're center backs, but normally you have Chaberco and Moreira going up into the attack with Camacho staying back. So now Chaberco has to stay back and watch Amundsen and Moreira go up. Moreira gets hurt. So now, okay, who do we throw in? It's one of those things where even LAFC, right? Danny Bouanga is just too good. Let's be fair there. He got held in MLS Cup 23 in the 5-1 win in LA last year, even in the Leagues Cup final. But I think just with injuries and with the fact that LAFC is pretty damn good, we're missing that piece of confidence to still be one of the dominant back three lines in the league. It's not so much on Nancy, it's not so much on the players, but when you have, as I mentioned before, the injuries and people playing out of position, they're not comfortable. So just trying to get that back in tune is going to be a very, very tough test, especially now that we have more injuries and have absolutely nobody this weekend.
And the 2 clean sheets you got were against New England, which is god awful, and Houston, which is having a really tough time.
Yes.
So.
We're not proud of that, by the way.
Yeah. Hey, Chris, I'll end with you. Columbus, you think they can keep this going?
Well, Todd made a really good point, which is, you believe in what Wilfred Nancy can do with any roster. If he's not the best coach in the league, then it's probably him and Brian Schmetzer. I tend to lean towards Schmetzer just because Schmetzer is a former St. Louis soccer player. He played here for a little bit in his career, but we value our Homer perspective on things. But he's one of the elite coaches, and so with those guys, and there's not many of them in this league, but that can take kind of anybody and compete. And we have been paying attention to Columbus here because obviously we have a former City player playing there in Aziel Jackson. So anytime, especially, in other sports, a St. Louis player gets moved on, we do tend to, keep an eye on what they're doing. Todd made a really good point in that Nancy has the ability to kind of conjure results out of nothing. And so, yes, I think that Columbus is a team that they know very well that you don't need to win your conference to win the cup. Right. We've talked about that on other appearances when I've done your show before, when's the last time a 1 seed won anything? Like, it's been a while. Right. So it's more like, hey, you need to get healthy. You need to be in a solid playoff position, but I don't think they're going to, panic and go crazy, just to try to finish first or second when they could just as easily do, have great success in the cup at a 4 or 5 or 6 seed. So, I think, it's really early. And to me, the season is almost broken into 3 sections of first 10 games, middle 14, and last 10. And so in the first 10, you're kind of figuring out who you have, what your team is, who your reliable starters are going to be, what your formation is going to be. And then you get into that long stretch in the middle of the season where that's really where you need to accumulate points. But if you can have success early, just like City did in 23, they had a bad half of the second half of the season, right? But they had built up so much leeway by having all that success early that it can carry you, right? And so if Columbus can have a few more gains of success and build a buffer of points to allow for issues like injuries and things like that to come up, it'll be fine. So I don't think there's any reason to worry.
Chris, not that we're with you. Let's go to St. Louis. St. Louis, 4 clean sheets, haven't allowed a single goal. also might be very boring brand of soccer. Chris, your opinion on St. Louis so far? I know that they were. I mean, obviously, when you look at the scoreline, it was obvious. But just watching the game, the most active game they had in the attack was against the Galaxy. But outside of that, it's usually defend. St. Louis up until this point, are you surprised? And what have you thought about the overall team so far, 4 games into the season?
Not surprised, maybe pleasantly surprised. I
Okay.
think the vibes are pretty positive here in town. Obviously winning does that. It makes everybody happy no matter how it
For
happens.
sure.
But the first game was Colorado here. It was 26 degrees at kickoff. So you're not expecting when it's that cold. I know you down there in Miami have no idea what that's like. But,
No idea.
the rest of us do. So
We've never seen
we're
an
not,
orange ball in our lives.
yeah, exactly. So it was 26 degrees here. And so when it's that cold, you're not really expecting high flying offense because these guys are freezing to death. So
Yeah.
I kind of give them a pass on that. Also first game under a new coach, new system. So we can, we've kind of written that one off. Say, hey, we didn't score against Colorado.
You got a point.
It's fine. Yeah.
Yeah.
Second game, I think, when they go out to San Diego, it's San Diego's first game ever. Right. And I remember from 2 years ago what the environment was like here in St. Louis, where the stadium, was just nuts. The people were insanely loud. It was ridiculously crazy. And I think Charlotte played that game completely the wrong way, which was they tried to match the energy of what our players were doing based off the crowd, kind of energizing them. And Charlotte tried to match that. And I remember Enzo Capetti, our first villain here in town, got in Berkey's face. They almost, they're arguing and screaming at each other 5 minutes in the game. And that did nothing but pour gasoline on an already lit fire. And I think Olaf Melberg, our new coach, did the exact perfect thing when we went out to San Diego's first ever game, which was take the crowd completely out of it, take the steam out of the game, slow the pace down, muddy it up, make it ugly. Don't allow them to run up and down and create all this excitement. And by the 60-minute mark, you had, a bunch of fans sitting there in San Diego, not real happy because they weren't seeing what they wanted. And I think that was perfect when you think about Melberg's history. This is a guy who was Sweden's national team captain. He was a center back, so he knows defense. He knows how to control pace of games. He played, for Aston Villa in the Premier League and had a long career. So I think he did the right thing in taking that kind of steam out and the energy out of that game. And now 4 games on, a point in San Diego, like Ty was talking about earlier, that's a pretty good result. Like that's a pretty solid team. Nobody knew what to make of them, but hey, getting a point there, especially if you've paid attention to what their field situation is going to be like. Because as soon as San Diego State starts to play football on that field, it is going to be a nightmare. It's going to be awful. It's already bad. It's going to be terrible. The U.S. women's team played 3 days before City played out there, and they're leaving divots in there, like you wouldn't believe. It was horrible. And I'm thinking, what is this going to be like in August and September when football season starts? Right. So I'm glad we got it out of the way. We got out there, got our point, and got the heck out of there. And then you move on to the next 2 games. So you had by all admissions, a weakened Galaxy team, obviously with all the injury issues they have, no Ricky Pooch, no, Paintsel, all kinds of injuries, but City goes out against a team that we have never gotten even a point off of.
Really? I wasn't
aware
of that.
I'm sorry. That's incorrect. So the Galaxy, we've never actually not gotten a point off. We've never actually lost to the Galaxy, but but we continued that streak. The team that we hadn't ever got a point off was Seattle. Yeah, we had never even gotten a tie from them. And so the structure of the team so far is obviously centered around the defense. Melberg is playing a 5-3-2 or 5-4-1. The structure of the team has been such a 180 from last 2 years and what Carnell had, which was who cares about defense? Let's just go press and try and score 5 goals and win that way. It's been a shock to the system, but you can see why it's working. And you just hope that offensively they can match what the defense is doing. And especially, we have Roman Berkey who's injured. He'll be out for a month with a fractured hand. He missed last week's game.
Yeah.
And so we have Ben Lunt come in and start.
Big Ben.
And so, Ben Lunt is a guy who has never had a real opportunity here. He's played almost nothing, no games in the past 2 years. I think maybe under 3 or 4 games a year because they just play Berkey constantly. But this is a guy who was USL goalkeeper of the year in 2020. So obviously he is an accomplished goalkeeper. He would probably start for a pretty good number of teams here in this league. So I think they're confident in him. But one of the biggest differences now that they are so sound defensively is that they are not relying on Berkey to constantly every game make 10 amazing saves just to get a point, right? And that's what's happening last year, right? Is he was playing, out of his mind and in the first year as well because he had to. And the four games this season, he stood around, did nothing against Colorado. They had one shot. I don't think it was on goal. San Diego had no high quality scoring chances. What City is doing is clogging the box so much. They're saying, hey, if you want to take shots from 20, 25 yards
outside the box,
we have the best goalkeeper in the league. Feel free. Go ahead. And they're not giving up these high danger chances. Now the Galaxy had a couple and Berkey made some unbelievable saves. And that's really the only game he has had to make those types of saves. And that's such a change, from what we're used to seeing. And so game 4 against Seattle, Ben Lunt had 2 chances he had to, make a save on when we needed him to make a save, and he did. And that's all that we were asked him to do. Right. And so defensively, they've been amazing. Henry Kessler has played at an all-star level. They finally put him on team of the match week, team of the match day this week. We've been banging that drum since game 1. He's been unbelievable and getting no flowers for it. And finally they put him on not even the starters. They put him in the reserves of the team of the match week. And we're like, what does he have to do? Like he
has to score
insanely good. Yeah. I mean, I guess he has to score.
Yeah. That's usually how it goes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Axel made it when I think he had a goal or an assist for Minnesota.
So really what we're waiting for, like I said, is if the offense can catch up to what the defense has done, this is going to be a pretty good team. When I was on with you in the previews, we talked about their depth and we talked about how they will be able to play and have multiple guys at different positions. And so, no Berkey, no Thomas Totland, their right wing back's going to be out for a month with a pulled hammy. And so that's going to be a little bit of a challenge, but again, they do have depth this year. And so they're going to need it. But yeah, so far they have not played probably the most visually attractive soccer. But
is that going to be the blueprint though? Yeah,
I think it is.
And I don't think anybody's going to care if you keep getting points, right?
Yeah.
Maybe not winning, getting draws, whatever it may be. But if you keep getting points, nobody's going to care. But if you stop getting points, that's rough to watch.
Correct. What we're waiting for, and what's going to be super, super interesting, because he is really stuck to his guns, which is a 5-4 or 5-3-2 or 5-4-1. They haven't played anything else because, again, they haven't given up a goal yet. And he is clearly, yes, by the way, Soccer Daddy, yes, Taylor Twellman is from St. Louis. And so, yes, so they have not given up a goal. They have stuck to their kind of defensive principles. And you can tell that what Mellberg wants to do is make them extraordinarily difficult to play against. And I think that's what they've shown so far, is that they're a tough team to break down, and they play that low block, and they clog the box, and they don't give you a lot of opportunities. And so really what we're waiting to see is what happens when they inevitably finally trail in a game, right? Because we haven't all year. And so what happens when we need to score? What changes will Mellberg make? And they played a little bit of a 4-3-3 in the preseason. And I think you might see that, formational change if they get behind and all of a sudden there's 15 or 20 minutes left in the game and they're trailing. Like, I think you might see that type of change, but we haven't seen it yet because we haven't needed to. So that's going to be really intriguing to me, is when they finally inevitably fall behind in a game, how does he react to it?
Possibly this weekend. And let's move over to Philadelphia with Todd, because Philadelphia is that other surprise team, and they're playing against St. Louis this weekend. Todd, Philly, I thought that their attack would be good. It was good last year. I thought they just improved the roster as far as the attack goes, so I thought that they would still be good. I didn't expect them to be top of the East. Obviously, it's still early in the season. Todd, what do you think about Philadelphia so far? And I would say, are you surprised? But I remember I had you on after week 1, and you weren't expecting this to continue. So I'm assuming you are surprised.
I starting the season prior to last week, 3-0, maybe a little bit of a surprise, but I didn't think they were going to be as bad as when MLS decided to interview a whole bunch of their MLS employees, and I think the average rating was 12th place finish that people at MLS had them, and I didn't think the Union would be that bad. I thought maybe around a 7 or 8 seed, just because of how much better teams in the East got. And I thought New England, with all their pieces that they had brought in, that they would be a lot better. And we're talking about how they're not scoring goals. And I
thought that they would score a goal at least. Yeah,
yeah, exactly. 4 games in, and the only goal you get scored is an own goal scored.
Yeah, their leading goal scorer is a NYCFC defender.
Yeah, and questions should probably be asked of Caleb Porter. And yeah, I know that he's won MLS Cup with Portland Timbers. I know he's won MLS Cup with Columbus Crew. But if I'm not mistaken, Ty can back me up, he kind of ran himself out of town, right? Just pushing too many wrong buttons, and it was time to move on from Caleb Porter.
Well, yeah, he also bet his house that this team would make the playoffs. And the last 2 years after winning MLS Cup, we failed. So, I mean, if you want a coach that bets his house on things not happening, go ahead and take Caleb Porter somewhere besides New England.
Yeah, so I mean, I thought the East got better, but the Union did. I mean, they filled a lot of key positions in this offseason, starting in the midfield with bringing in Jovan Lukic, who scored back-to-back potential goal of the year nominations with the
last week was a banger.
It was, and he scored prior to that against New England, also a really, really good goal. So I'll be curious to see at the end of the season which one of those 2 goals winds up being the nomination, but unless he does something even more crazy. But yeah, both goals were great that Jovan's provided. But the one thing that he provides in the midfield is, winning the ball back for the Union. And same with Danley John Jock, who the Union brought in August of last year to kind of replace Jose Martinez. I didn't think they were exactly a like-for-like switch. I thought Danley was more so of a outside 8. I thought that's where he would fit in this formation. And obviously, for people who pay attention to MLS week in, week out, you notice Jim Curtin's not on that sideline anymore because the Union let him go at the end of the season because they did not make the playoffs. And so they bring in former St. Louis City manager Bradley Cornell. And so Chris can speak heavily to this, where it's just no transition soccer. You want to press, win that ball back as quick as possible, and then 1-2 passes, and then try to go off with a shot. And yeah, Danley, John Jock, and Jovan Lukic have been key with winning the ball back for the Union in the midfield. And they just add so much stability to protecting that back line. And another player that's been a little bit of a surprise is Oluwatu Makanya. The Union signed him, I believe, in the summer of 2023. Jim Curtin did not give him a chance whatsoever. He played primarily with Union 2. This season, Bradley Cornell said, you know what, look, it's a clean slate for every single player. I don't care what you did or didn't do in years prior. It's a new coach, and it's your chance to impress the coaching staff. And Oluwatu is one of those players that took that to heart, whether it be in Spain when the Union had the preseason or down in Florida in preseason. Jan Glavinovic, who they got on loan from Newell's Old Boys, played against Orlando City only 20 minutes, I believe it was, towards the end of the game. But then he's missed the last 3 games because of a hamstring injury. And so, yeah, Makanya stepped in really well at that center back role, and Bradley Cornell in the last 4 weeks played the same exact lineup. That's not going to be the case this week because you have Makanya out now because he picked up such a stupid red card towards the end of the game. Picks up the ball, throws it at Jacob Schaufelberg's face, and then you go ahead and look at international duty. I think the Union and Atlanta are the 2 teams that have the most players out on international duty. The Union are missing a total of 7, and this is going to be an interesting game. Chris is talking about the depth of the team. Ty's talking about the depth of the team. Well, yeah, I would argue that the Union, this is probably one of their deeper squads that they've had the last couple of seasons, and now that depth's going to be tested with all these players out on international duty. One big player in Ty Baribo, the leading goal scorer in MLS, away with Israel. And so the Union went out in the offseason, paid $3.4 million for Bruno Damiani from Nacional in Uruguay, and scored on his debut against Cincinnati. And I'd imagine he'll go into the lineup this week, pairing Mikal Ua up top, playing as the second striker. But yeah, the Union did such a good job this offseason just filling in all the key positions. They lost Leon Flack. They lost Jack Elliott. Julian Kranza they sold in the summertime last year. Jose Martinez. Key players for the Union. But people in the media had been calling for this the last couple of years, where the Union decided to run it back the last 3-4 seasons in a row. And that just doesn't work in MLS. As good as that may sound on paper, that, hey, look, this team has the chemistry and they were so close in 2022. Let's run it back again. It doesn't work. They run it back again in 2024. Obviously missed the playoffs. And so it was about time for changes. And so far, these players that the Union had brought in have all seemed to be seamless fits into the starting lineup. And like I said, I mean, the two in the midfield, Danley John Jock and Jovan Lukic, have been so key to the Union's success this season.
Are you guys going to be susceptible to the counter and the long ball like you were against Nashville throughout the season? Or is that just an aberration?
Yeah, and Jacob Glesnes, the Union center back, and Andre Blake both talked about that after the game where, Nashville knew what the Union wanted to do. It's, play out of the back. You usually get the ball out wide right to a Frankie Westfield, but Nashville were easy to break that down. And if I'm not mistaken, the call for St. Louis fans and people in the media was Bradley Carnell didn't seem to have a plan B or C. It was always, we're going to play this certain way, and if it doesn't work, we're going to keep playing it. And yeah, you can sense the frustration in the locker room with Jacob Glesnes and Andre Blake after the game that, yeah, the game plan they had against Nashville wasn't the correct game plan, and they could not handle Sam Surridge the whole game. And I had asked Bradley Carnell after the game, was this just simply Nashville being more physical than you? And yeah, he agreed. And he said, this is two teams playing similar styles, and Nashville essentially just came in there and won in it more. And I can't remember the last time that teams come in and been more physical than the Philadelphia Union, especially at Subaru Park. And so that was a little bit of a shock to see. And I do think Bradley Carnell is going to still want to play this style of soccer where, let's press, let's quickly transition and play the occasional long ball up top. But I would argue the one thing that's a little bit different than his time in St. Louis is the Union, and I looked this up the other day, I think they're in the top 6 or 7 in MLS in terms of possession, in which wasn't really the case for this Union team the last couple seasons. And to see a Red Bull style system and that team possess the ball as often as the Union do. And part of that was they were down against Nashville this week. And so, of course, that team's going to sit back and let you have the ball because they already have the lead. So you break them down with the ball. Cincinnati came into Subaru Park and told the Union, hey, you keep the ball, you beat us with the ball. And the Union had no issues whatsoever breaking down Cincinnati. But I think that's going to be a case just going forward. And we saw it towards, I would say, the middle of the season last year under Jim Curtin. Teams said, you know what, Union? You want to beat us? You have the ball. We're going to sit back and we're going to counter you. And the Union struggled with that last year. And I wouldn't be shocked at all if that is the game plan that these teams have, whether it be coming to Subaru Park or the Union going on the road, just telling them, hey, you beat us with the ball. We're going to hit you on the counterattack. That comment you just pulled up there, Danny, that's something I question myself, right? Is this high press solid play sustainable for a full season? My one argument
Chris will tell you no.
Yeah, and I think I may lean that way as well. But my one argument I would have is the Union, on paper, have better depth than Bradley Carnell had in St. Louis. In my opinion,
Sure.
he has a better starting 11 than St. Louis had back in his tenure. And the Union are only in 2 competitions, U.S. Open Cup and MLS play. And so when you only have to focus on those 2, you don't have to focus on Leagues Cup. You don't have to focus on CONCACAF Champions Cup. You have a game a week. Then I think, yeah, this system should be susceptible, but I do have questions about that as well.
The fact that they just lost to Nashville now, they have this game where they're going to go shorthanded against St. Louis, and then they have a game against Miami. Hypothetically, they fall 3 in a row. Hypothetically, do you think all of a sudden the narrative changes and then the fans kind of turn? Because I'm sure that the fans are really hyped right now. But all of a sudden, you go start with 3 wins, and next thing you know, you're looking at 3 wins, 3 losses. How's the fan base feeling right now? Do you think that they're ready to jump on Carnell if that happens?
Yeah. I mean, they're over the moon. A 3-0 start prior to the Nashville game. Nobody in that fan base, I think, would have told you that would have happened, and that's why it was so important to start 3-0. Because as you just mentioned, Danny, St. Louis, you're missing a lot of players, and if you lose that game, okay, now you've lost 2 in a row. You go down to Miami, where it's a tough place to play, and yeah, I know the Union made it an exciting game last year in league's play, where I think that game ended 3-2 or 4-2, something like that. But the Union had chances down in Miami. Of course, I was under Jim Curtin, and we'll see how similar of a game plan Bradley Cornell has for Miami. But yeah,
and they have,
I
and
do
after
think,
Miami, they have Orlando, NYCFC, and Atlanta. So it
yeah,
doesn't get any easier.
it does not at all.
And fortunately, Philadelphia sports fans are widely known for being very patient and
and rational. And
yeah,
very
and rational. So yeah, they don't ever overreact to anything. So
We saw what happened this weekend.
Yeah.
This weekend, throwing hot dogs on the field because they didn't agree with the penalty that Hani
Oh
Mukhtar
yeah. He
They
was
could have
celebrating
been-
when they were throwing them. All right.
As a Cardinals fan, I remember batteries getting thrown at JD Drew back in the day. So yeah, we're very familiar with things from flying out of the stands in Philadelphia. So for sure.
Yeah, so I mean,
the thing I had question for you, Todd, is and Danny and I talked about this when I was on with him for the season preview thing is, the knock, like you said, on Carnell has traditionally been that he's not able to adapt. They have one style and that's all they knew how to do. And especially for City, and I was talking about this a little bit earlier in the week, City relied under Carnell on scoring first, because if they scored first, then that meant the other team had to open up defensively to try and get a goal back, which would snowball into them having more chances and, and opening up things for City and having it compound like that. And now City is kind of trying to score first so they can stay in their defensive structure. Have you noticed like a push in the first 20, like Carnell had with City, like, hey, they're really coming out strong, trying to get an early goal? Is that something that they're still doing under him, or is he more temperate about how he's opening games up?
Yeah, I mean, so the Union have conceded twice first now this season against Orlando City, where Orlando came out pretty hot and scored, I believe, in the 9th minute, but then the Union equalized pretty soon after. Yeah, I mean, this is a team that's, trying to start games fast, right? And they caught a lot of pressure last week against Atlanta. I mean, against Nashville, the opening week against Orlando City. So I think the jury's still out, right? The good thing is though that the Union showed fight against Nashville when they conceded first. The Union came back 13, 14 minutes, something like that, minutes later, and found the equalizer. When they conceded down in Orlando City, they found the equalizer and didn't take their foot out off the pedal. Yeah, the Union were probably deserving to go down in halftime 2-1 because they didn't create enough chances in the first half, I thought. The one knock on this team, though, last year was coming out of the breaks. They started games so slow, and that's not been the case under Bradley Cornell. All 4 games this season, they've been the team that's created the first chance and usually finding the ball in the back of the net. The Union come out this week against Nashville in the second half in the 58th minute, I believe it was, where Daniel Gazak basically had a one-on-one against Joe Willis, got too fancy with the ball and wound up getting a shot saved. And then a few moments after that, the Union thought they had won a penalty with Quinn Sullivan. So it's not like they're sitting back and waiting for chances. Yeah, they're starting both halves pretty hot, but it's been more noticeable in the second half where whatever Bradley Cornell is telling them, they're coming out pretty much with the first couple chances. And Nashville was the exception with them equalizing, but against Cincinnati they've equalized, and the same thing against Orlando City the first week.
Chris, do you think that Philadelphia is going to cool off?
I do a little bit. I think they're talented enough. I think it's a playoff team. For sure. Like, I don't think that's now are they going to run away? Yeah. Like, are they going to run away with the East? Yeah. I mean, I don't think they're going to run away with the East. Are they going to, our team's going to figure them out? I think it's TBD. I think it's to be determined on whether Carnell has evolved and his style has evolved, and again, that was the biggest knock, like we talked about, is that he had no plan B. We saw it for a year and a half. We saw him, even in year 2, when we had all kinds of injury problems, he didn't change. Like, this is a style we play. and this is what we're going to do. And I'm going to keep banging my head against this wall. And it just didn't work. And so, and we like the guy. He's a super nice individual. I've met him a couple times. He's a great dude. I want him to have success. But I'm hoping that he is able to, and I think for Philly's sake, he needs to be able to grow out of, just playing that one, Red Bull style. And now if what Todd said is accurate, which is it is, that they've had a lot more possession than typically Carnell's teams had here, that goes a long way because, one of the things that City always had trouble with when you have 30% possession, you're chasing a lot, you're running all over defensively and you're burning energy and you're adding miles to legs. Right. And I don't know what the humidity and heat's like in Philly in the summertime, but it's miserable here in St. Louis. And so that was always the question from day one was, can they play that style when it's 90 degrees here with 85% humidity? Like you can't do that all summer. Like you can't run like that. You can do it when you play in a dome in Vancouver or in Atlanta, you can do it in Montreal or Toronto, but it's a lot harder when you're playing in heat and humidity. And so, yeah, I think that they are a solid playoff team for sure. Do I think that they're, going to win the East? I don't think so.
So those are the 4 teams. Just curious, we're going to go around table. I'll start with Ty.
Daniel, I don't mean to interrupt you. I'm very sorry, but
No.
There's one more thing that we need to talk about, which is very important. I don't want you to miss it. Is Todd can tell us how your favorite former City player and now Philadelphia Union player, Indiana Vassilev, is doing. I'd like to find out from him how things are going for Indy and Philly. Todd.
Yeah, so I had talked to Indy last Saturday. I have a piece out there, and I'd asked Indy about the trade between St. Louis and Philadelphia, and he made it known that he didn't really want to speak too much on that trade. He said, this was something that he was looking for, and this was the best fit for him, just because of Bradley Cornell being in Philadelphia, Mitch Hildebrand, who was also in St. Louis City as an assistant coach under Bradley Cornell. So yeah, I mean, it worked out to be a good fit for him. He's played a role off of the bench for the Union, so not too much of a dynamic player, but I expect him to start 100%. I mean, he's a guy that you can just tell talking to him lives and breathes for Bradley Cornell. If Bradley Cornell told him to go die on the field, I'm sure he would. So I mean, in my 6 or 7 minute chat with him, good guy. So
You got an assist.
Forms.
You got an assist against Cincy, no?
Yeah, that's right. He did the layoff pass, right? I mean,
it was a gimme.
I think Lukic, it was against New England. Lukic did all the hard part, right? It's just a simple layoff pass by Indy and a world-class finish by Lukic there. But yeah, I mean, to be determined on how well he does fit into the system. I think he will fit in well just because it's what he was used to in St. Louis. One of the first choices for Bradley Cornell in St. Louis. And yeah, I think it will be a good fit for Indy here in Philadelphia.
Chris, do you miss him? No. Do you miss him, Chris?
You know what? He was one of the biggest personalities, that we had. I think him and Tim Parker were kind of the heart of at least the locker room for the first couple of years. And what we miss is his versatility because he can play kind of in multiple different roles. But he was not going to get minutes here with the team that's currently constructed, with the roster that we have, with the depth that we have. He just wasn't going to get minutes. So I certainly don't blame him for trying to go somewhere where he could play. And clearly he was the most, I don't want to say upset, but the most affected by Carnell's firing last year. You could see it in the press conference after, like, he was devastated, right? He loved playing for him. And I think, it just made perfect sense if he wasn't going to get an opportunity here. He's in a contract year, I believe, that his contract's expiring. So I know he has aspirations to go overseas and play. He has Hungarian parentage background, so he could potentially play their national team still if he wanted. So yeah, I mean, there's an opportunity for him, and so nobody here in St. Louis, I think, thought worse of him for asking to get moved, and we understood. And so, do I miss him? I miss his personality because he's a funny guy, and he was just a character and a good guy to have around. But on field, I think he would have struggled to get minutes here. So.
Yeah, I was never a fan of him on the pitch either.
Yeah, Yeah, I mean, I don't see a Vassilev jersey hanging behind you.
No,
So,
no, yeah, you won't.
I
Look at
had to
Pittsburgh.
bring him up. I had to bring him up.
No,
Sorry.
I
Yeah,
appreciate
hopefully,
that.
hopefully,
I
I
don't know
doesn't
how
get
I
me
missed
banned
that.
from the show. Like it's
Mitch
like it's like Voldemort. I said his name, so
Oh
sorry.
man,
Mitch Hildebrand haunts Columbus Crew's dreams, man.
Ty. Any team outside of the four we just talked about that you would say either surprised you because they got to a hot start or because they got off to a cold start? Because I think the Galaxy is understandable because of their injuries, but I guess that would be one that you wouldn't expect defending champs to basically luck their way into 1 point in the fourth game. Otherwise, they wouldn't have any points right now. Any team that surprised you so far outside of the four we just spoke about already?
I mean, given the fact that they made it to MLS Cup final, ultimately lost, I think Red Bulls also. I think they were an absolute dominant workhorse in the latter half of the season last year, obviously beating us out in the first round. Then going
started
to
hot last year.
Yeah, and it cooled off, and then beating us out in the first round last year. Then going, I can't remember who else they beat out, but they beat out Orlando for the Eastern Conference title. Definitely deserved, I think, another goal or two in the MLS Cup final. But you get Choupo-Moting, and I think with him, Red Bulls kind of not really fell off, but I think they deserve to be higher. Some of those rushes haven't gone their way, but that team is definitely one to watch out for, in my opinion, at least. They're quiet flying under the radar a little bit, but you get them on a good game, and it's OV for the team that they're playing.
So you think so Red Bull surprised you with the slow start.
Mm-hmm.
Sam, any hot or cold team that can surprise you to start the season?
I guess I would kind of go with almost like a general comment about the West, which is just I think things seem really balanced, and no team has really distinguished themselves either as being, and sitting, in Vancouver, the team that's at the top of the table. It's like there's still a lot to be proven, a long way to go. And you look, further down the standings, and you have your typical Seattle slow start. You have obviously the Galaxy that are struggling with injuries. But you have teams like San Jose where they have a bunch of new players. It's worked in some respects, it hasn't in others. I just think the West is wide open, pretty evenly balanced, and it might be really tight all year. That's kind of my read on the West.
Am I crazy for thinking that the Colorado Rapids are a legit contender?
No, I don't think so. I think that it's a good.
I love Mihailovic and Navajo. I think that they're the most underrated duo in the league.
I mean, it was a solid team last year. Zach Steffen wasn't great, kind of dragged them down a little bit. So if they can just get like league average goalkeeping out of him,
he just had 12 saves this past weekend.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If you're talking about tough places to play as well, just the altitude, that's always one where maybe it's like not the greatest environment on earth, but still a really tough place to play.
Because I don't know, I just Colorado, man. I don't know why. I just think that they're gonna be really good this year. Chris,
but this is the thing about the West. You can make like an upside and downside case for every team that's pretty convincing. It's like they have these three things that could make them a contender, and they have these couple things where, we're not so sure. I feel like I could say that for almost every team in the West.
Well, look at Seattle and their health. Jordan Moore's out, Arriola out for the year, and all of a sudden, I thought that they'd be looking good, and now I don't know.
Schmetzer tends to find a way, though, as
always.
He always
they're
does.
The Pittsburgh Steelers of the MLS. You think that they're doing poorly, and next thing you know, the Pittsburgh Steelers are in the playoffs. And I'm like, how the hell did they end up in there? Chris, any team outside of the ones we just spoke about that you would say either surprised you, whether it be hot or cold?
I think yes, but it's not so much what they've done on the field. It's that I'm not sure what they're doing or why they've made the player moves that they've made, which is RSL.
RSL.
I don't understand what RSL was doing. Like, are you just saying, hey, we're just going to trust in Diego Luna to do everything, and he's got to play 4 different positions simultaneously, and we don't need to replace, Arango. Like I
Everybody.
I don't understand what they're doing. I have some very good friends who are RSL fans, and they're also kind of like, yeah, we're not 100% sure what's going on. And you can look at some of the teams that are kind of in the, again, we're only 4 games in, right? And so you can have one outlier game and it all of a sudden, you're not in quote unquote playoff position, but we're only 4 games in. But what they built last year, they were a very dangerous, very good team. And they don't scare me at all this year. Like, I don't get what they're trying to do. They're in kind of this limbo of, they have one really great player, and then have they surrounded him with enough to really do anything? I don't know. Right. And so that's to me, like, and that's not on field stuff. It's more of just off field, on field. I think the team that really, has kind of been hot and cold, up and down, even though they're solidly, 5th or 6th, I think, is Minnesota. Like, I think, I expected them to be to kind of have the start that Vancouver has had. Because I thought Minnesota would come out of the gate rolling because they were so good last year, and they've been building this now for a couple seasons, and that was who I really expected to really grab things at the beginning, and they've been solid. They've been fine. I think they're 2-1-1. So it's not like they've started slow, but I haven't been as impressed with them as I thought that I would be. So.
And Calorix saying, I think RSL wants to grow younger talent similar to Columbus, just without the stars aside. Big balls himself, Diego Luna. And people have been talking about Atlanta in the chat. I was a little surprised with how unimpressive their attack has been so far. Even though they've been looking dangerous, they just can't seem to get the ball in the back of the net, which I think has surprised me a bit, because I thought that they'd be better, but I think they can grow into it. But I guess that would be the surprise to me. Oh, and New England, the fact that they haven't scored. It's wild to me. And Todd, I'll end it with you. Team that surprised you, whether it be hot or cold. Oh, actually, I'm sorry, Todd. Real quick, I need to ask Chris a question, because I had a back and forth with Todd when he was on the show a couple weeks ago about this. He said that my taste is completely horrendous. I need to get some validation here. Since you brought them up, Chris, is this not the best kit in the league this year?
The best one in the entire league this year?
All right, fine. Is it nice?
I do like them.
All right, there we go. That's what I wanted to hear.
Yeah,
I can tell you what the problem is. Here's what the problem is that should have been what City had. And there's a lot of people in St. Louis who are not wild about the route we went this year, which is the fake half collar thing. That's basically LAFC's. It's a red version of LAFC's jersey.
Right.
And it's very boring, and a lot of people weren't super thrilled with it, right? Some people like it, a lot of people didn't, whatever. However, our kit sponsor is Purina, whose logo is a checkerboard. And it was like, if RSL could do this, why couldn't we have a checkerboard, which would have made perfect sense to tie it in with our jersey sponsor? And they didn't. So yes, I do like this. It, obviously it has, it is very reminiscent of European,
Czech Republic and all.
Yeah, Czech Republic, I do like it. Now I am one of the few that I think can't stand their other ones. What I call Microsoft Excel jerseys. It looks like a bar chart with the background mountains thing. Those I can't stand, but I do like their checkerboard jerseys. Yes,
it's my favorite kit of
really
of this year. Yeah, absolutely. And Todd killed me for it.
No, I didn't.
Oh no, you killed me for the Philadelphia kid.
Yeah,
that's
Philadelphia.
Right.
Yeah,
Phillies is nice. I like the Goosebumps. Columbus kit's cool. There was some pretty good ones this year. I think that one's interesting. But again, you could do a whole show just on kit designs.
We did.
And like the thing about it is because we're still all stuck with Adidas.
I hate that so much.
Yeah, and again, we talked a little bit beforehand about we have our big supporters group has a real tight relationship with Ford Madison, which is a USL 1 club in Wisconsin, and they're a Hummel club, and Hummel jersey designs are amazing. They're tremendous, and you just look at what they're able to do and say, oh man, if MLS would ever just open it up and let every club make their own deal with an Umbro and Adidas and Puma and Nike and Hummel and all these
You're a
different
single
kids.
entity, it kind of
Yeah.
holds you back.
Yeah, and that's one of the biggest downsides to the single entity
Absolutely.
thing is they sign these one-all deals with companies like Adidas. So,
Yeah.
I mean, Sam, he didn't ask your opinion. Do you guys
was waiting for
do you
that.
like those kids? Do you like
Of
the
course he does.
RSL checkerboard?
He's from Vancouver. They have class.
Yeah, I mean, I think anything that pushes the boundaries of what you can
Absolutely.
do with the
Make it look
Adidas
different.
kit, I'm all for.
Absolutely. I'm trying to find the RSL bootleg. I'm not going to spend $150 on a kit that isn't my team. But if I can find the bootleg, I'm buying the RSL and wearing it to a show. I absolutely love that kit. But yeah. All right. Todd, so sorry I cut you off before. So just a team that surprised you, whether it be hot or cold, start to the season.
Well, I'm going to keep it short because I had forgot my water, so I can't have a water break. Sorry, soccer daddy. So yeah, I mean, I started off talking about New England. So yeah, it's shocking to me with all the talent, at least on paper, that they brought in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, shocked that they have yet to score a goal this season.
Yeah, and Langoni didn't start last game. I need to hit up John Stone from the Revs podcast because I don't know why he wasn't starting. I don't know if he's lost his spot or what, but he's not starting. Campana's injured. Carlos Gil is probably pissed. It's just a mess out there in New England. But we've gone an hour and 5 minutes. I appreciate you guys coming on and talking hot starts of the season. I'm going to go around table. We'll start with Sam. Let everybody know where they could find you if they want to hear a little more about the Whitecaps and the future Las Vegas Whitecaps.
Yeah, hopefully not. The thirdsub.ca in terms of written stuff, third sub on any social channels. We have podcasts as well. So, yeah, wall-to-wall coverage, and hopefully the Whitecaps' good fortunes continue at least somewhat, and always fun coming on this show.
How confident are you feeling against Pumas?
Well, I don't know. It's interesting. The Monterrey Pumas result, I think, is certainly a bit confidence-inspiring to see that. But, you know, I going down to Mexico is challenging. They are going to be without Ryan Gauld, at least for that first portion, the first leg. So I think it's going to be tough. But I think now that the Whitecaps have beat Monterrey, anything's on the table in this competition.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah, well, it's a true coin flip.
Yeah, it should be fun to watch. Chris, again, appreciate you. Let everybody know where they can find you.
So, so St. Louis, STLsoccernews.com is the website. Basically, it covers everything from amateur all the way up to pro soccer in St. Louis. And one of the nice resources that we have available is links, socials, and Spotify, Apple links to basically every podcast in MLS, not just St. Louis, but we have a giant database of pretty much everybody everywhere. If we don't have one, let me know because we'll get it added in about 10 minutes. But everybody here is all your pods and stuff are all listed on there. So it's a good resource to help other pods connect. That's always something we really enjoy facilitating and helping out with and helping people, get people from other cities on and we've heard from one of the Austin pods. They use it all the time and, to find a guest. So, so STLsoccernews.com and then STL Soccer News on Blue Sky and Twitter. And usually, talking St. Louis City, but also, U.S. Open Cup, and just U.S. soccer in general. So always appreciate the opportunity to come on and talk to you, Daniel. So
and I always appreciate you taking the time. Now let's go over to the two guys I hate the most. Ty, Columbus, what's going on? Let everybody know where they can find you.
Yeah, I'm on Twitter still at FisherTyler__, or you guys can catch the Wiseman Say podcast every Wednesday at 8 p.m. On whatever platform you desire, iHeart, Spotify, Apple. Our live streams again at 8 o'clock Eastern time on YouTube, and you guys can also find us on Twitter at Wiseman Pod.
And then Mr. Krause calling me out. He says that's a lie. Daniel likes Ty. Maybe, but Todd for sure I don't. Todd, last but not least, let everybody know where they can find you, Todd the God.
Yeah, I know that's fact because you and Chris are flaking on me about meeting up next week in Miami. So,
well, who's flaking? I never flaked.
Yeah, I mean, what are the plans? I haven't seen anything. I have Solana hitting me up like if there's two flake one year, I got you. So come on, Chris and Danny. Yeah. But if you guys aren't following the podcast on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook, follow Free Kick Pod. We get your podcast, The Free Kick. Check out the YouTube channel, youtube.com/Free Kick Pod. where we go live on the podcast, usually the day after the game. And I do goals breakdown videos every single week. And you can check out my writing podcast or goals breakdown videos all in one spot, thefreekick.substack.com.
And I will say, even though I don't like Todd, you got to make sure that you follow that pod, because hands down, and I'm not just saying that because he's here, my favorite goal breakdowns of anybody on social media, and I'm talking Twitter, Instagram. If you watch Todd's goal breakdowns, I'm not sure how you do all that video editing and stuff. Best goal breakdowns. I promise you, check that out. Free Kick Pod, Todd. It's Todd Life. Awesome stuff. And Todd will be in Miami. If anybody, well, I know a lot of people in the chat are from Miami. Todd is going to be in the stadium. So if you want to go see him in person, I'm sure you could go just wait for him outside the West Stands. So, all right. Again, appreciate you guys. It was awesome talking Hot Starts. And we'll be back tomorrow talking predictions with Chris, predicting next week's, this weekend's games, even though there's only 14 games because there's 2 teams that got a break for international break. All right. If you are listening on audio, we appreciate you listening all the way to the end. Please leave us 5 stars, comment, review, all that good stuff. If you're watching on YouTube, thank you for watching all the way to the end. Please like, subscribe, share, tell your friends. And for those of you in the chat, as always, you guys are the best part of the show. We appreciate you hanging out with us for the last hour and 10 minutes. And we'll be back tomorrow. So until the next one, have a good one.